My husband said, "My ex is coming to Christmas dinner with us." He thought it would be just a little awkward. Honey, he had no idea that I had my own holiday surprise that would leave everyone stunned. Now listen here, sugar, because Auntie May is about to take you on a Christmas ride you will never forget. I love the holidays. I love decorations, I love cookies, I love people laughing and hugging and pretending their fruitcake is edible. But nothing in all my years of decking the halls prepared me for the day my husband announced that his ex was coming to Christmas dinner. Can you imagine? The nerve, the audacity, the timing. I smiled at him sweetly, all the while plotting a little holiday magic of my own. And when I say magic, baby, I mean I had a plan so shocking that even Santa himself would take notes. Buckle up, because Auntie May is about to teach you 6 lessons on handling betrayal, keeping grace, and delivering revenge that's sweeter than pumpkin pie. The moment my husband said those words, my entire day shifted like the ground under my feet had just turned into quicksand. My stomach flipped over in a way that made me clutch the counter as I tried to steady my heartbeat. He looked at me with that innocent smile like he had just offered me something ordinary like a cup of coffee, and I had to stop myself from laughing bitterly because honey, nothing about this was ordinary. Not for me, not for my sanity, and certainly not for the carefully planned Christmas I had envisioned. I had spent weeks imagining a peaceful, joyful dinner filled with laughter and love, with my family gathered around our table with twinkling lights reflecting off the ornaments and candles flickering softly. And in one sentence my husband had thrown a grenade into the middle of it. I remember standing there frozen in the kitchen trying to process the audacity of the announcement. He said it as if it were nothing. As if inviting your ex to Christmas dinner was the most natural thing in the world. As if my presence, my feelings, my dignity did not exist. My mind raced through every possible scenario. Would she show up wearing something outrageous? Would she flirt with him under my nose pretending we were all still friends? Would my family notice the tension and somehow make it worse? I felt the heat rise in my face the way it does when you are both furious and amused at the same time. The combination made me feel alive in a way I had not expected, and it made me realize that Auntie May was about to go to work in a way my husband could not even begin to imagine. I walked to the window and looked out at the snow falling softly against the cold glass. It was beautiful, almost peaceful, almost serene, and yet the peace was a lie because inside my chest my heart was pounding like a marching band at full volume. I took a slow deep breath, trying to remind myself that panic would get me nowhere. I had seen this coming in some form before and I had prepared for it. I had my instincts, my wit, my ability to read people, and I knew that while he thought he was clever he had no idea that I had already started plotting. The seeds of my plan began to take root in my mind as clearly as the icicles hanging from the eaves outside. I thought about how she would walk into my home smiling and pretending like she belonged there. She would act casual, she would laugh a little too loudly, she would probably make comments designed to get under my skin. And I thought about my husband standing there nodding and smiling like a man who had no concept of the storm about to hit. It made me chuckle quietly to myself because honey, Auntie May does not play small, and Christmas is the perfect stage for a little drama. The best part about the announcement was that it had given me the perfect opportunity to show my strength, my intelligence, and my ability to remain calm while plotting a beautiful spectacle that would leave everyone speechless. I remembered all the Christmases we had spent together, the traditions we had built, the ornaments hung with care, the cookies baked with love, and suddenly I felt a surge of protective energy. This was my holiday and no one was going to turn it into a competition or a contest for attention. I was determined to reclaim the evening and make sure that the focus would be on the laughter, the love, and yes, the drama that Auntie May could create better than anyone else. I ran through every possible approach in my mind, imagining different scenarios, how I would greet her, how I would interact with my husband, how I would make sure the evening unfolded exactly the way I intended. Then I thought about my family and friends who would be attending. I imagined their expressions, their whispered comments, their silent observations. I knew that if I handled this with calm grace and a little mischief, it would become a story they would tell for years. The excitement of it coursed through me like a warm current, energizing every part of my body. I could feel the muscles in my arms loosen, the tension in my shoulders melt, and my mind sharpen all at once. The announcement had initially made me feel shocked and angry, but now it felt like a challenge, an opportunity, and a stage to display a side of myself that my husband had forgotten existed. I poured myself a glass of water and held it in my hands, trying to center my thoughts. I reminded myself that the first step in any plan is patience. Do not rush, reveal nothing, and keep them guessing. The less they suspect, the more powerful the surprise. I rehearsed little lines in my head, small comments I could make to test her reactions, to see how she would behave in my space and with my people. I practiced smiling with warmth while my eyes communicated everything that words could not. I imagined how she might try to assert dominance, how she might attempt to charm my family, how she might even test my patience, and I vowed to remain untouchable, graceful, untarnished, and in control. I glanced at the clock and realized we had a few hours before the dinner would begin, and that window of time was perfect. I could prepare the table, the food, the ambiance, and most importantly, I could prepare myself. I walked around the living room, straightened decorations, adjusted candles, flicked ornaments just slightly to create a subtle sense of elegance and authority. Every movement was deliberate, calculated, precise. I wanted to make sure that from the moment she stepped through the door, the power of my presence would be undeniable. This was my home, my celebration, and I intended to make that clear without a single word spoken to anyone. Then I thought about my husband. He had no idea the energy shift that was happening in the room, no idea that I had already begun to orchestrate a scene that would leave him stunned. He thought inviting his ex to Christmas dinner was a harmless social experiment, a way to spice up the evening. Little did he know that Auntie May was about to turn that spice into a full-course meal of consequences with dessert to follow. I felt a thrill of satisfaction knowing that my calm smile would mask the whirlwind of thoughts running through my mind. I was already plotting my little reveal, the exact moment I would redirect attention and reclaim the narrative of the evening. I checked my reflection in the mirror one more time. My hair, my outfit, my posture, all perfect. I practiced my smile a little in the mirror, thinking about how she would react, how my husband would react, how my family would look at the unfolding situation. Every small detail mattered. Auntie May never leaves things to chance. Every glance, every word, every gesture had to be calculated with precision. I felt a surge of power knowing that I had already won before the game had even begun. The announcement had shaken the beginning of the evening, but it had also created the perfect opportunity for me to shine in a way no one would forget. I walked into the kitchen again and started arranging appetizers, thinking about the timing of the dinner, thinking about the order of events, thinking about how to guide every conversation without seeming controlling or obvious. I thought about how I could sprinkle subtle truths in small doses to remind everyone of reality without creating conflict. The goal was not chaos, the goal was clarity, the goal was a graceful reveal that would leave everyone shocked and impressed simultaneously. I smiled to myself, thinking about how Auntie May always finds a way to turn a moment of betrayal into a stage for brilliance. By the time the doorbell rang, I was ready. My mind was sharp, my smile calm, my demeanor regal. I heard my husband call out her name and felt the faintest flutter in my chest, not of fear but of anticipation. The announcement that had initially filled me with disbelief and frustration had now transformed into a plan, a pathway, a perfect opportunity. I walked toward the door, opened it with warmth and charm, and welcomed her into my home. She had no idea what was coming. My husband had no idea what was coming. And as I led them into the living room, I felt the thrill of power and control coursing through me like a secret river flowing beneath the surface. This was the moment Auntie May had been waiting for. The announcement had sparked the evening, the stage was set, and I was ready to perform with elegance, grace, and a touch of delicious mischief. The text of his words still echoed in my mind, but it had transformed from a shock into fuel, into strategy, into art. And with every step I took through my home, I knew the holiday would never be the same again, because Auntie May had arrived fully prepared and fully unstoppable. After the initial shock of hearing that my husband's ex would be joining our Christmas dinner, I realized that the first step was to remain calm. Calmness is power, and honey, Auntie May never reveals all her power at once. I stood in the kitchen with a glass of wine in my hand and let the warmth flow through me as I thought about the evening ahead. On the surface I smiled lightly and nodded at my husband as he spoke about mundane details, while inside I was already plotting. Every detail mattered: the timing, the atmosphere, the positioning of everyone in the room, the subtle cues I could give to draw attention exactly where I wanted it to go. I reminded myself that emotion unchecked is a dangerous thing. Anger or frustration might make a person act impulsively, but strategy requires patience. So I took deep measured breaths, letting the calm settle through my chest and out through my hands. I paced slowly through the living room, noticing the soft glow of the Christmas lights reflecting on the ornaments, imagining how it would all look when the drama unfolded. Every visual detail was important. The way the chairs were arranged, the placement of the centerpiece, the angle of the candles, all had to support my plan without making it obvious that a battle of wits was already underway. I poured myself another glass of wine and let the sweetness of it linger on my tongue while I rehearsed the lines I might need to say. Auntie May does not wing it when stakes are high. I imagined how I would greet her, how I would maintain composure, and how I would gently assert the space and power that was inherently mine. The key was subtlety. The key was keeping my smile steady and warm while my mind moved 1,000 steps ahead, calculating every possible reaction and counter-reaction. Every glance from my husband would be noted, every facial expression observed and stored for later reference. I thought about her arrival in vivid detail. The sound of her shoes on the steps, the click of her nails as she entered the living room, the way she might try to position herself in the center of attention, the false familiarity she would attempt to project. I imagined all of it and planned my responses in advance. A small nod here, a question there, a gentle touch to redirect attention, all would be orchestrated perfectly to keep her unbalanced, just enough to make the evening entertaining but never chaotic. My goal was dominance without obvious confrontation, elegance with subtle power. I prepared the space for the perfect reveal. I moved the chairs slightly so that the natural flow of conversation would lead her toward me without her realizing it. I adjusted the lighting so that the glow on the table would highlight my presence and command attention without seeming intentional. I placed the ornaments in a way that guided the eye naturally, and I even considered the placement of the silverware as a psychological anchor. Details matter, honey. Every tiny element adds to the perception of control, and the perception of control is exactly what Auntie May thrives on. While I arranged the room, I thought about my husband. He had no idea what I was capable of. He believed the discomfort would be mine, the awkwardness my burden to bear. Little did he know that every move he thought he had orchestrated to impress or satisfy his ex had already been anticipated. I felt a quiet satisfaction knowing that I was not only prepared for her but prepared to turn the situation into a display of my own strength and intelligence. I smiled at the thought of him realizing too late that he had underestimated me completely. I took a moment to step back and observe the room from a distance. From this vantage point I could see the entire stage one had set. The lights, the decorations, the furniture placement all created a subtle framework that would support my plan without appearing staged. I imagined the interactions unfolding and rehearsed how I would interject questions, how I would redirect conversations, how I would maintain calm authority in every moment. I reminded myself that the key to elegance in a tense situation is a mixture of attentiveness and poise. I moved to the dining table and checked every plate, every napkin, every utensil, ensuring that everything was aligned perfectly. Auntie May does not leave anything to chance, especially when the drama is about to arrive at the doorstep. I practiced a few casual gestures in front of the mirror to make sure my expressions could convey warmth and charm while subtly guiding the energy of the room. I rehearsed the art of listening attentively while controlling the narrative of every conversation. The beauty of it was that no one could see the effort. It appeared effortless, but it was calculated with precision. As the clock ticked closer to her arrival, I felt a surge of anticipation. Not fear but excitement. The opportunity to demonstrate my composure and intelligence under pressure was intoxicating. I moved through the room ensuring everything was prepared to perfection and rehearsed my smile in the reflection of the window. Every detail counted. Every small adjustment could change the energy of the evening. I reminded myself that the goal was never to humiliate but to assert dominance through grace, elegance, and quiet power. I envisioned the exact moment of her entrance. I imagined opening the door, smiling warmly while mentally noting her body language, her posture, her expression. I prepared for small attempts at charm or attention-seeking and planned how I would redirect each without confrontation. I reminded myself that subtlety always wins over brute confrontation in a social setting. The power of observation and timing is unmatched, and Auntie May always wins when she employs both. I practiced in my mind how I would greet her husband or friends if she brought any, and how I would integrate humor and charm to keep the energy controlled and friendly yet firmly under my influence. I rehearsed the ability to listen attentively while planting gentle seeds of authority to ensure that I guided the interactions without overt control. I rehearsed the art of engaging others in conversation while subtly maintaining my dominance in the room. By the time the doorbell rang, I was fully composed. I had rehearsed my smile, my greetings, my posture, my gestures, every element of my presence. I felt the thrill of anticipation and power, knowing that everything I had prepared would unfold exactly as planned. The calm that I exuded would contrast perfectly with any awkwardness she might attempt to bring, and the elegance of my demeanor would leave a lasting impression on everyone present. I felt proud knowing that Auntie May had transformed a potentially tense situation into a perfect stage for grace, strategy, and quiet mastery. I walked to the door and opened it with warmth and charm. She stepped inside with her practiced smile, and I welcomed her graciously, observing every micro-expression, every little movement, noting her attempt to assert presence. I guided her subtly with gestures and conversation and immediately established my control over the energy of the room without her realizing. My husband looked on bewildered as the situation unfolded exactly as I had predicted. I smiled gently, knowing that patience, preparation, and calm observation had given me an edge he had never anticipated. From the moment she entered the house until she was seated at the table, I maintained perfect composure. I subtly guided conversations, directed attention toward topics that highlighted my strengths, and minimized any attempt at dominance on her part. I allowed small gestures to communicate warmth and control simultaneously. Every movement, every smile, every glance was calculated to maintain authority while remaining graceful. By the time we began dinner, the energy in the room had shifted completely. She felt the underlying power of my presence, and I felt the satisfaction of executing a plan flawlessly. Every bite, every toast, every laugh was under my control without needing to raise my voice or appear confrontational. I had transformed an awkward announcement into a subtle display of strategic dominance and elegance that left everyone present aware of my influence without knowing exactly why. The announcement that initially shook me had now become the foundation of my evening. I felt a sense of empowerment that came from anticipating every move, every expression, every reaction. The patience and calm that I had cultivated allowed me to turn potential tension into a showcase of grace, intelligence, and subtle authority. Auntie May had triumphed once again, not through chaos but through preparation, poise, and observation. Once I had established my calm and controlled presence, the next step was observation, because honey, Auntie May knows that the most powerful moves happen when you watch and learn before you act. I settled into a chair near the living room and let my eyes scan every detail of the room, every gesture, every expression. My husband was still buzzing with excitement, oblivious to the subtle tension that was beginning to unfold, and his ex moved with a practiced ease, trying to appear comfortable and confident while her eyes flickered to every corner, looking for approval, validation, or simply a reaction from me. I did not give her one. My expression remained warm, soft, inviting, friendly, and untouchable all at the same time, and it created a barrier that she could not breach no matter how hard she tried. I noticed the small things first, the twitch in her finger as she adjusted her bracelet, the way she smiled just slightly too long at my husband, the little nod she gave when someone else spoke that was meant to position herself as influential. Every small gesture became a piece of the puzzle that I carefully catalogued in my mind. I observed her laughter, noting whether it was genuine or performative. I watched her posture, trying to see if she felt comfortable in my presence or if she was quietly calculating. Auntie May does not overlook details, because details are where the power resides, and I intended to claim it fully. I paid close attention to my husband as well, noticing the slight tension in his jaw, the way he laughed a little louder when she complimented him, the small shifts in his posture whenever her attention flickered toward him. I knew instinctively that he had underestimated the complexity of the evening, that he had underestimated me, and that his ex had no idea that Auntie May was already fully aware of every strategy he and she might attempt. Observation is not passive, it is active calculation, and I engaged in it with full intensity, letting every movement feed my understanding of the energy in the room and how I would direct it. I noted the placement of the guests around the table, the way each person interacted with one another, and how the flow of conversation naturally developed. I saw opportunities where I could intervene subtly to redirect focus and create situations where my dominance could shine through without overt confrontation. I realized that the key to controlling a social environment is not through force but through finesse, the ability to guide others without them realizing they are being guided. This is where Auntie May thrives. I watched her try to engage others in conversation, subtly inserting herself into dialogues with a carefully crafted charm that she believed would establish her presence and influence. I smiled gently inside because every effort she made was catalogued in my mind as fuel for my eventual reveal. I practiced small gestures in my head, how I would interject, how I would redirect attention, how I would use humor to subtly expose her overreach while maintaining my composure and charm. Every tiny move she made was an opportunity to demonstrate my intelligence and strategic thinking. The room felt like a chessboard and I was already several moves ahead. I imagined how I would play each piece, each comment, each glance to control the board and maintain the upper hand. She had walked in thinking she could dominate the narrative, thinking she could charm her way into relevance, and my husband believed it would be amusing and harmless. Little did they know that Auntie May had arrived fully prepared and fully aware, and every observation I made was part of a larger plan that would leave everyone stunned by the end of the evening. I took note of the patterns in her behavior, noticing the moments she tried to assert dominance versus the moments she retreated and tried to observe. I watched the micro-expressions, the subtle eye rolls, the tiny gestures meant to communicate quietly with my husband, and I stored them all for later use. I observed without reacting and let the room flow around me while I remained a calm island of strategy and elegance. Every observation strengthened my position and clarified the steps I would take next. As the meal progressed, I let her attempt to draw attention to herself while I maintained my steady presence. I asked questions with genuine interest that gently redirected conversations. I offered subtle compliments that reinforced my own authority without appearing competitive. I laughed at jokes that deserved laughter and smiled at stories that required acknowledgement. All the while my eyes scanned her every micro-reaction, noting where she faltered, where she overreached, and where she underestimated my awareness. Observation is a power play, honey, and I was winning before she even realized the game had started. I noticed the way she tried to create alliances with certain guests, the small gestures of agreement. The whispered comments meant to make me feel threatened. I noted the timing of her interjections and planned how I would use them to my advantage. Each move she made became part of the narrative I was crafting, and I allowed her every little maneuver to unfold naturally, because the more she tried to control the evening, the more evidence I gathered for my eventual reveal. I also observed my husband, watching how he responded to her every word, every glance, every subtle attempt at connection. I noted where he leaned in unconsciously, where he laughed a little too hard, and where he glanced toward me for reassurance or reaction. I catalogued it all, knowing that this information would be invaluable when the time came to turn the evening around. Observation is not just watching, it is understanding, predicting, and planning, and I employed it fully with a calm smile and sharp mind. I allowed myself a moment of satisfaction seeing the subtle shift in the energy around her. She was beginning to sense my awareness without understanding the depth of it. Her attempts to dominate were increasingly met with gentle redirection and calm presence. My husband was beginning to realize that the evening was unfolding differently than he had imagined, and I felt a quiet thrill knowing that every observation had prepared me to take full control at the perfect moment. As dessert was served, I continued my observation, cataloging reactions, noting the small changes in posture, the shifts in eye contact, the subtle changes in tone. I practiced the small gestures and smiles that would accompany my reveal and rehearsed the timing of my words in my head. Observation had given me the advantage, and now I was ready to convert it into strategic action. Every detail from the initial announcement to her every gesture had been absorbed and analyzed, and I felt a surge of confidence knowing that Auntie May was fully prepared to assert herself in a manner that was elegant, powerful, and unforgettable. By the time the evening drew to its climax, I had observed every detail, every movement, every nuance, and had fully internalized the dynamics of the room. I knew where to assert influence, where to gently redirect, and how to create a moment that would leave everyone stunned. Observation had transformed the evening from potential chaos into a stage set for strategic brilliance and social mastery. I had turned their attempt to disrupt my holiday into the perfect setup for my own controlled display of intelligence, charm, and power. I let the night continue unfolding while maintaining my composure and elegance, quietly noting every detail, knowing that when the moment came to act, one would do so with the full authority of preparation and observation. Auntie May does not react impulsively, she observes, calculates, and executes flawlessly. This evening was no different. Every glance, every gesture, every small movement was mine to catalog and mine to use in the unfolding drama that I had fully envisioned from the moment he uttered the words about his ex joining Christmas dinner. By the end of the evening, observation had become my most potent tool. I had learned their tendencies, anticipated their moves, and subtly guided the energy of the room without a single overt confrontation. My calm and confident presence contrasted perfectly with their attempts at influence, creating a quiet tension that underscored my dominance and elegance. Auntie May had turned observation into power and power into preparation, and the evening was ready for the final act. Once I had observed the room and fully understood the energy dynamics, the next step was preparation, because honey, Auntie May knows that power without planning is wasted. I moved quietly through the living room, straightening decorations, adjusting candles subtly, ensuring the glow fell perfectly on the table and my position, while also creating a natural spotlight that would highlight me when the moment arrived. Every detail mattered. The angle of the ornaments, the placement of the silverware, the alignment of the chairs, even the small napkin folds were all considered, because when you are orchestrating a performance, every tiny element contributes to the overall effect. Preparation is not just physical, it is mental, emotional, and psychological, and I immersed myself fully in each layer. I thought carefully about my surprise, the one I would deliver that would leave everyone stunned. I wanted it to be elegant, powerful, and precise. Nothing flashy, nothing crude, nothing chaotic. The kind of surprise that seems effortless but is actually meticulously crafted. I rehearsed small gestures in my mind, how I would position my body, how I would use eye contact, how I would pace my words. I imagined the timing down to the exact second, the subtle pauses that would draw attention to what I wanted to reveal, and the small reactions that would punctuate the performance. Auntie May does not leave surprises to chance, she plans them with precision. I prepared my husband as well without him realizing it. Every glance, every comment I made subtly reminded him of the authority and composure I maintained. I spoke warmly in passing about the holiday cheer, about shared memories, about traditions, subtly reinforcing my role as the matriarch and orchestrator of the evening. I knew that when the surprise came, he would be caught off guard, not only by the reveal itself but by the stark contrast between his excess presence and my controlled elegance. Preparation is not just about objects, it is about people, about energy, about perception, and I accounted for it all. I arranged the room to control traffic patterns, ensuring that she would naturally move in the direction I intended without noticing the subtle nudges of guidance. The placement of chairs, the positioning of the table settings, and even the arrangement of decorative objects all contributed to the unspoken choreography that would make my reveal appear spontaneous and natural. Auntie May understands that power often hides in invisibility, that subtle control often outperforms obvious dominance. Preparation allows the invisible hand to guide events perfectly. I practiced the exact moment I would smile and speak the words that would redirect attention, the phrases that would subtly highlight the dynamics I wanted to emphasize, and the pauses that would create suspense. I rehearsed mentally the flow of conversation, anticipating every possible interruption and how I would gracefully incorporate or neutralize it. Preparation includes rehearsing unpredictability, because people rarely act in perfect sequence and Auntie May always accounts for every variable. I arranged subtle markers of my authority around the room, objects that reflected taste, elegance, and control without seeming boastful. Small personal touches that reminded everyone present of my influence, my creativity, and my thoughtful attention to detail. These markers would silently reinforce the narrative of my dominance, the unspoken story of my control, and the backdrop against which the evening would unfold. Preparation is as much about setting the stage as it is about performing on it. I also prepared my own emotional state, ensuring calm, composure, and readiness. I breathed deeply, centered myself mentally, and emotionally visualized the reveal, imagining the reactions of my husband, his ex, my family, and friends. I rehearsed maintaining poise under unexpected moves, imagining small surprises she might attempt and how I would incorporate them seamlessly into my performance. Auntie May knows that emotional preparation is the backbone of strategic execution. Without it, even the best physical preparation can falter. I tested small interactions before the dinner began, subtly directing conversation, gently guiding energy, and observing responses to minor adjustments. Each small interaction became a rehearsal for the larger moment. I maintained charm while subtly asserting influence, carefully balancing warmth and authority. The power of preparation is in repetition, in subtlety, in control of every micro moment that builds toward the climactic act. I considered timing the perfect moment when my reveal would have maximum impact, when the attention of the room was focused and when her attempts to dominate would be most visible. I imagined her gestures, her expressions, her slight attempts at charm, and planned my responses down to the smallest inflection of my voice. I rehearsed the pauses, the smiles, the glances, the small gestures that would enhance the impact of the reveal, ensuring it would be a performance remembered for its precision and elegance. I also prepared contingencies, anticipating missteps or interruptions that might arise during the evening. Auntie May never relies on luck. Every possible disruption was accounted for and countermeasures imagined in advance. I thought about how to redirect conversation smoothly, how to regain attention gracefully, how to maintain composure if she attempted to assert herself aggressively, and how to ensure my reveal remained the highlight of the evening. Preparation includes anticipation of unpredictability, and I had thought of every scenario. I rehearsed my entrance into the space where the reveal would occur, the timing of my steps, the distribution of my gaze, the subtle gestures I would make toward the table, toward my husband, toward the guests. Each element was carefully planned to communicate elegance, confidence, and subtle dominance while drawing attention naturally and effortlessly. Auntie May understands that the most effective power is seen but not felt, that presence is noticed without overt display. I prepared my words with attention to tone, cadence, and timing, imagining the exact phrasing that would maximize clarity and impact. I considered the rhythm of the conversation, how to interject smoothly, how to highlight key points, how to draw attention without appearing manipulative. Every phrase chosen for effect, every pause for emphasis, and every gesture for subtle reinforcement. Preparation is complete when language is choreographed alongside physical and emotional presence. I also prepared for silence, recognizing that sometimes the most powerful moments are in stillness, in observation, in allowing others to react before speaking. Auntie May understands that silence is a strategic tool, a subtle force that commands attention without effort. I practiced holding my presence in quiet moments, watching interactions unfold and guiding them invisibly with posture, eye contact, and calm demeanor. By the time dinner began, my preparation was complete. The room had been subtly orchestrated, the interactions rehearsed, the emotional state controlled, the timing calculated, the contingencies imagined, and my presence perfected. I felt a surge of confidence, knowing that every element had been accounted for, every detail considered, and every potential reaction anticipated. Auntie May had transformed a potentially awkward and tense evening into a perfectly orchestrated stage for elegance, strategic power, and unforgettable impact. As she arrived and stepped into the room, the preparation revealed itself naturally. My presence drew attention without effort. The room responded to the subtle cues I had established. The energy shifted under my guidance, and I remained calm and composed, fully ready to execute the next step. Preparation had set the stage, and now performance was ready to begin. Every small detail, from lighting to placement to timing, had been carefully considered, and the evening unfolded exactly as Auntie May had designed it. Preparation had turned the initial shock of the announcement into an opportunity, a stage, and a performance in which I controlled the narrative elegantly, effortlessly, and decisively. Auntie May thrives in preparation because preparation transforms uncertainty into clarity and chaos into control. The surprise I had in store would be amplified by the careful groundwork I had laid in every aspect of the evening. The table was set, the stage prepared, the mind focused, and the moment was ready for the perfect reveal. The moment of truth arrived slowly, like the first notes of a symphony, building tension and anticipation throughout the room. And honey, Auntie May knows that timing is everything. I had prepared the stage, the interactions, the emotional state, and the subtle guidance of attention. Now it was time to act with precision and grace. I rose from my chair smoothly, maintaining a calm smile while letting my eyes sweep over the room, noting every glance, every expression, every subtle shift in energy. This was my moment, my performance, and my opportunity to turn an awkward, tense situation into a display of controlled brilliance that would leave everyone stunned. I began by making small gestures, drawing attention naturally without seeming deliberate. A step forward, a gentle smile, a tilt of the head, and suddenly the room responded. Eyes flicked toward me, unconsciously following the cues I had subtly placed in the environment through preparation, placement, timing, and observation. Auntie May understands that true power is often invisible, and the audience does not realize they are being guided until the climax has already arrived. I had positioned myself perfectly to control the narrative without appearing controlling. My husband looked at me with a mixture of curiosity and confusion, as if sensing that something was shifting but unable to determine what. His ex, confident and charming moments before, now felt a subtle unease in my presence, something she could not identify but could feel in the air. Observation had taught me her tendencies, my preparation had refined my response, and now performance allowed me to orchestrate the moment flawlessly. Every glance, every micro-expression, every subtle gesture became part of a symphony of control that only Auntie May could conduct. I spoke a few words lightly, casually, naturally, drawing attention to a shared memory of a holiday tradition connecting everyone at the table without appearing to assert dominance. My tone warm, inviting, friendly, yet underlaid with subtle authority. Eyes turned to me, voluntarily drawn by the natural flow of conversation I had cultivated. The tension that had begun to rise in her presence began to dissipate as the focus subtly shifted toward my influence and my control. The room was mine to guide, and I did so effortlessly. I allowed small interactions to unfold while gently redirecting energy. When she attempted to interject with a comment, I smiled and included her while subtly emphasizing the points I wanted highlighted. My husband's ex did not realize that every attempt to assert herself was being incorporated into the narrative I had designed, and every attempt to challenge my presence only served to enhance the impact of my eventual reveal. Auntie May understands that skillful guidance often appears spontaneous yet is fully controlled from start to finish. Then the moment I had prepared for arrived naturally, as if by coincidence, though honey, Auntie May knows nothing is left to coincidence. I reached into my bag, retrieved the small box I had prepared, and held it lightly, letting my presence and the subtle tension in the room enhance the anticipation. I smiled warmly as I handed it to my husband and suggested he open it now, with the same casual tone as if it were just another gift. Every second of hesitation, every slight shift in expression heightened the drama and allowed the impact to resonate fully across the room. He opened the box slowly, and his expression shifted in real time from curiosity to disbelief. The contents revealed my carefully orchestrated surprise, a reminder, a symbol, and a subtle assertion of authority that neither he nor his ex could ignore. The room froze in anticipation, catching every nuance of reaction, every small change in posture, every micro-expression. Auntie May understands that a reveal is never just the object or the words, it is the orchestration of every small movement and reaction around it. I allowed the reactions to build while I maintained perfect composure, calm, steady, elegant, and completely unshaken. I observed my husband's subtle attempts to recover his confidence, the way his ex blinked rapidly trying to process the shift in energy, and the way other guests absorbed the tension and then relaxed slightly as the power dynamics became clear. My presence dominated the room without raising my voice, without appearing aggressive, simply through preparation, observation, and execution. Auntie May thrives in this kind of controlled theatricality. As he spoke his words of shock, I nodded with understanding and smiled warmly, reinforcing the social norms of politeness while silently asserting my control. Each laugh, each gasp, each small comment was absorbed, incorporated, and amplified into the experience, ensuring that my influence remained central to the evening. The beauty of this moment lay in subtlety, in the balance of charm and authority, in the precise timing of gestures and expressions that amplified the impact of the reveal. I watched carefully as my husband attempted to speak, to redirect attention as if to mitigate embarrassment, yet every word only highlighted the contrast between my calm authority and his flustered reaction. His ex attempted to interject, but I guided the interaction naturally with questions and comments that acknowledged her presence while emphasizing my dominance and control. The room absorbed the energy, subtly shifting its attention naturally toward me and the carefully executed narrative I had crafted. I allowed a moment of silence to settle over the table, letting tension linger just long enough to maximize impact while maintaining warmth and grace. Auntie May knows that silence can be more powerful than words when combined with composure and timing. Every eye in the room tracked me, noticing my calm posture, my gentle smile, my effortless charm, and the subtle way I guided focus without appearing controlling. This was the culmination of observation, preparation, and strategy, all executed flawlessly. I then guided the conversation back to shared memories to diffuse potential discomfort, reinforcing a sense of tradition and inclusivity while maintaining subtle power. I laughed gently at appropriate moments, nodded encouragingly, and smiled broadly to ensure that warmth accompanied authority. My husband's ex realized finally that her presence had been woven. into my narrative rather than dominating it, and her attempts to assert herself had been gently absorbed into my performance, leaving her subtly off balance and aware of my control. I continued to execute small interventions throughout the evening, managing the flow of conversation, redirecting focus subtly, and maintaining my composure throughout. I allowed everyone to engage naturally while keeping the rhythm of interaction under my influence, ensuring that my prepared surprise remained the highlight and that my authority remained clear yet graceful. Auntie May thrives in subtlety and control without aggression, and this evening was a masterclass in that philosophy. By the end of dinner, the impact was undeniable. Every reaction had been accounted for, every gesture carefully guided, every glance anticipated, and my presence remained central and commanding. I had turned what could have been an awkward and tense evening into a display of elegance, strategic control, and subtle dominance that left my husband stunned, my ex off balance, and every other guest impressed. The moment of truth had been executed perfectly because observation, preparation, and performance had aligned seamlessly. I allowed the final moments of the evening to unfold naturally, guiding conversation and energy gently toward closure while maintaining composure and grace. Every laugh, every comment, every subtle interaction reinforced my control and elegance, demonstrating that Auntie May always prevails, not through aggression but through strategic execution and flawless timing. The reveal had transformed the energy of the room, and I had executed it with precision and power that was both invisible and unmistakable. As the evening concluded, I felt the thrill of satisfaction, knowing that the moment of truth had been delivered perfectly and that the impact would be remembered long after the night ended. Observation, preparation, and execution had culminated in a seamless performance of charm, authority, and subtle dominance. Auntie May had taken what could have been a chaotic night and turned it into an unforgettable display of strategy, grace, and intelligence. The aftermath of the reveal was a delicate balance of satisfaction and control, because Auntie May knows that the finale is just as important as the performance itself. Once the moment had passed and the initial shock had settled, I allowed the room to breathe, to absorb the impact, and to realize fully what had just transpired. My husband was still processing the situation, his jaw tight, his eyes wide, and a mixture of embarrassment and awe reflecting across his face. His ex sat quietly, attempting to regain composure, but the subtle shift in power was unmistakable. Everyone else present adjusted to the new energy in the room, as if an invisible current had subtly but decisively changed the dynamics of the evening. I walked slowly around the room, maintaining my calm smile, letting my presence settle like a gentle wave over the table and the guests. I observed the subtle acknowledgments in their expressions, the slight nods, the quiet murmurs that indicated they understood the shift that had taken place. Auntie May knows that power is not always loud or overt, it is often the quiet awareness that communicates dominance and command. By remaining composed and elegant, I allowed the aftermath to unfold naturally, with me firmly at the center of it without raising my voice or appearing confrontational. I moved toward my husband and gently touched his arm with a smile that conveyed warmth and reassurance while subtly asserting my influence. This was not about humiliation, it was about clarity and control. Every micro-expression, every hesitation he displayed was a reminder of the skill and grace with which I had executed my plan. His ex attempted to interject with a comment, but I included her, lightly guiding the interaction so that she could not disrupt the narrative while also maintaining the clear boundaries I had established. Auntie May thrives in subtlety, control, and elegance, and this moment was a masterclass in all three. I allowed guests to continue conversations while subtly directing attention toward topics that reinforced my presence and influence. A laugh here, a nod there, a small gesture guiding eyes toward me without seeming deliberate ensured that the energy remained under my guidance. The beauty of this approach is that everyone feels included and engaged while simultaneously recognizing, even unconsciously, the authority and composure that I exude. I had transformed what could have been discomfort or tension into admiration, respect, and intrigue. I walked around the room, occasionally making small comments, engaging lightly with each person while observing reactions and reinforcing the social architecture I had created. The subtle power plays I had executed earlier now manifested naturally as the evening progressed. Guests adjusted their behavior, not consciously aware of my influence but clearly responding to the structure I had imposed through calm authority and elegant presence. Auntie May understands that control often works best when invisible yet undeniable. I glanced at my husband again, noting his attempts to regain footing and his ex's small gestures of unease. I allowed small spaces for them to adjust while subtly reinforcing the hierarchy I had established. My movements were deliberate yet appeared effortless. My smiles were warm yet carried subtle authority. My glances carried presence without intimidation. The aftermath of a well-executed reveal is a careful orchestration of continued influence, and I conducted it with finesse and confidence. I reflected on how much preparation, observation, and performance had contributed to the success of the evening. Every small choice in decoration, every subtle gesture, every micro-interaction had been calculated in advance and had manifested perfectly in reality. The satisfaction of seeing my plan unfold with such precision was profound. Auntie May thrives on the ability to turn potential chaos into control, to transform disruption into demonstration, and to assert authority gracefully. The aftermath is as important as the climax because it cements the power and leaves lasting impressions. I allowed time for reflection, silently observing the subtle shifts in energy in the room, noting the way eyes lingered on me briefly before turning to others, noting the way conversation flowed with my influence present yet unobtrusive. This is where Auntie May's expertise shines, because understanding and maintaining power after the initial act is what separates fleeting victory from enduring influence. I maintained calm composure, knowing that every glance, every gesture, every pause reinforced the narrative I had carefully established. I ensured that my interactions were consistently warm, engaging, and authoritative in equal measure, allowing others to feel comfortable while remaining under the gentle gravity of my presence. I guided attention subtly, making sure the evening continued to feel natural and enjoyable while leaving no doubt about the shift in dynamics. My husband's ex recognized that her attempts at influence had been seamlessly absorbed and redirected, and though she attempted to smile and participate, the energy clearly favored me and my calm command. Auntie May understands that influence is not just about moments, it is about persistent subtlety and consistency across the span of interaction. I observed small moments of acknowledgement from my family and friends, noting subtle cues of respect, admiration, and awareness of my role in orchestrating the evening. These micro-acknowledgements reinforced my internal sense of accomplishment and demonstrated the enduring impact of a well-executed strategy. Auntie May understands that lasting influence is cemented not through a single act but through a series of deliberate interventions that guide perception and maintain authority with elegance. I moved through the room, making small adjustments in conversation flow with light humor and gentle affirmations, ensuring that attention remained on the positive energy of the evening while also maintaining the subtle hierarchy of influence I had established. My husband attempted small remarks to regain equilibrium, but I included him effortlessly in ways that reinforced my authority without appearing controlling. The ex adjusted subtly, realizing that the balance of power had shifted irrevocably yet gently without confrontation. As the evening drew toward conclusion, I reflected on the success of the event, noting the seamless alignment of observation, preparation, performance, and aftermath management. Every aspect of the night had unfolded exactly as I had envisioned through meticulous planning and strategic execution. Auntie May thrives in these moments when preparation transforms chaos into controlled brilliance, when the narrative is guided with subtlety and impact, and when the aftermath reinforces authority elegantly and permanently. I concluded small interactions with warmth and poise, leaving guests with a lasting impression of my calm confidence and understated control. The evening had been transformed from what could have been tension and awkwardness into an unforgettable display of elegance, influence, and strategy. I felt the quiet satisfaction of knowing that my actions had been fully effective and that the impact would resonate long after the night ended. Auntie May knows that true mastery is measured in the lasting effect of a carefully executed plan. I made one final pass through the room, noting lingering expressions, noting the subtle acknowledgement of the new dynamics, and feeling the satisfaction of a perfectly orchestrated evening. The room hummed with energy, guided by my presence and control, the result of observation, preparation, performance, and aftermath management combined. My husband had been humbled, my ex had been redirected, and the guests had been subtly guided to appreciate the elegance and authority I had asserted. The aftermath had been managed with precision to reinforce the narrative I had carefully constructed. By the time the evening ended, I had achieved complete clarity, satisfaction, and control. Every interaction had been accounted for, every gesture had been guided, every reaction anticipated, and the impact of my reveal and my sustained presence had been fully realized. Auntie May had transformed potential tension and discomfort into a lasting impression of strategic brilliance, composure, and grace. The evening concluded with a subtle but unmistakable acknowledgement of my dominance and authority and the knowledge that Auntie May had prevailed in the most elegant and unforgettable fashion. The final moments were a testament to the power of preparation, observation, performance, and aftermath management seamlessly integrated. I left the room knowing that the evening had been a complete success in every dimension, leaving my husband thoughtful, my ex quietly aware, and the guests impressed. Auntie May understands that mastery lies not in single acts but in the cumulative impact of sustained strategy, elegance, and subtle guidance. The aftermath is the stage upon which true influence is revealed and maintained, and I had executed it flawlessly, leaving a lasting legacy of calm authority and subtle power.